What's up, everybody? It's AT. Appreciate you jumping on this Aaron Torres Pod YouTube bonus clip. In just a minute, we're going to talk about another crazy weekend for Coach Prime, more big-time commitments, and the fact that I think it speaks to something big picture about where this program is going, who they're recruiting, and what it means for 2024. We're going to dive into it momentarily. Before we do, though, do me a quick favor. You see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen? Please make sure to click and subscribe and follow this channel. New college football content. National Signing Day is coming. Oh, by the way, the portal is humming. We ain't slowing down. No way, no how. So make sure to subscribe. Throw on those notifications. We just passed 30K. We're about to hit 31,000 subscribers. I think we can get to 35,000 by the start of the 2024 calendar year. Cannot do it without your support, so click subscribe. With that said, though, let's jump into the news of the weekend as Coach Prime, this dude cannot stop bringing in big-time recruits. And really, I think it goes back to last weekend. If you remember, I think the stat was they had 12 kids visit campus and got 11 commitments. Maybe it was 11 kids visit and 10 commitments, whatever. But you go back to last weekend, everybody this guy wanted, he got. And we talked about all of them already. I'm not going to go over it again, but Khalil Benson, the offensive tackle from Indiana, Matthew Bedford, an offensive guard from Indiana, Tyler Johnson from Houston, the list goes on and on. By the middle of the week, Will Shepard, star wide receiver from Vanderbilt, commits. I think he's one of the best players and wide receivers in the portal, which brings us to this weekend. Basically, from the time you woke up on Friday until right now as you're watching on Sunday night, all this dude does is pick up commitments. It is unbelievable. So let's dive into all of the new additions since we last talked about Coach Prime late last week. First of all, Friday, I think, was really a very important day for Colorado, okay? They get two commitments, a pair of former four-stars from Kentucky. Keaton Wade, Destin Wade. We have not talked about those guys yet. Destin, a former four-star quarterback. Keaton Wade, a former four-star linebacker. I bring it up because, listen, last weekend the focus was the offensive line, but you knew at some point you had to turn your attention to the defense, and that is exactly what Coach Prime did. Now, Destin Wade, I think it's great. Bring him in as a backup quarterback, backup Shador. You got a veteran, experienced guy that played at least a little bit for Kentucky over these last couple of years. He's a backup. He'll be ready for next year. But the headliner to me, with no disrespect to his brother, it is Keaton Wade. I can tell you, I know the Kentucky program well. Know a lot of people who cover that program. That is not a player that program wanted to lose. They really believe that he was one of their emerging stars on the defensive side of the football. Finished this past season, I believe it was right around 50 tackles, 5.5 TFLs, 2.5 sacks. And I mean, this is a guy, 51 tackles, as a matter of fact. How could I forget that last one that I didn't mention? But this was a guy that Kentucky did not want to lose. And so you have a guy with SEC experience that's flying all over the field. This is the kind of guy that you need if you're Coach Prime. And I know the haters will say, well, you know, you got one, but you need a bunch more. Well, I bring it up because that was the start of the weekend with the Wade twins. From there on Saturday, you get Preston Hodge, an elite defensive back from Liberty. Listen, I don't even know how PFF does all their grades, but PFF graded him as one of the best defensive backs in college football this year. Liberty, of course, was 13-0. They're playing in the Fiesta Bowl against Oregon. This kid commits over the weekend, and you think, okay, Coach Prime, starting to shore up that defense. Obviously, secondary isn't really a spot that you necessarily need a lot of bodies, but it doesn't hurt. Which brings us to Sunday when Coach Prime, this dude just went hard in the paint. Okay, so here is what Coach Prime did on Sunday in terms of commitments for the Colorado Buffaloes program, okay? So first of all, I know wide receiver is not a spot of priority, but when you can bring in difference makers, you can't have too many, okay? So Cordell Russell, a former top 100 recruit out of the state of Texas, very interesting. Last year, he was a 2023 kid. So he committed, he finished high school last year, committed to TCU, but even at the time, seriously considered Colorado and those ties to Coach Prime. Ends up deciding TCU is the place for him, ends up leaving TCU after this season, and he commits to Colorado. This guy is a burner. This guy was an elite high school prospect, had offers from Florida State, from Nebraska, from wherever. And so I bring it up because I know wide receiver, not necessarily a spot of priority, but when you can bring in this kind of dude, you don't pass it up. And like I said, second big time receiver that you've gotten just in the last couple days, Will Shepherd, of course, from Vanderbilt, who I think might have been the best wide receiver in the portal. The Timmons kid from NC State, that is going to be a deep, deep, deep wide receiver room. I already said it last week, by the way. I think they might have the best wide receiver core in the Big 12 next year. So that's worth noting. Oh, by the way, you thought Coach Prime was done on Sunday? Think again. On top of that, Walter Taylor, former four-star quarterback, big kid, physical kid, played at Vanderbilt this last year, mostly a runner. Well, he was brought in as well. Bring it up because think this is an important piece. As I just said, you got the commitment from Destin Wade a couple days ago. Now you add another four-star to the quarterback room. So two younger quarterbacks that you can develop over the next year. Obviously, one of them is going to take over from Deion Sanders. And so it's funny because everybody was freaking out. Remember, about 3 months ago, they get a commitment from a five-star 2025 kid named Antoine Hill. He decommits. A couple kids who were committed in the class of 2024, they decommit. Everybody's freaking out. Coach Prime says, I'll take care of it in the portal. Don't you worry one bit. He does with a second big-time backup quarterback who will obviously fight for that starting job in 2025. Finally, at least as I'm recording here at about 5 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday, the news is coming quick, but this is a big one. Quincy Wiggins. Get to know that name. This is the kind of guy that Coach Prime has been dying to get his hands on since he got to Colorado. How about this? A former high four-star, top 50 player in the class of 2022. He was the number one player in Louisiana, projected, the projectables as a potential early, first day type NFL draft pick. Goes to LSU, and listen, I know what people say, well, he didn't produce, blah, blah, this and that. Did you see LSU's defense? I ain't blaming it on any one guy because that whole defense was an abomination this year. But he hits the portal, 6'6", 250, elite NFL caliber defensive lineman, the type of guy that they were missing last year. So in total, since I last recorded, 5 difference makers that committed via the portal, 2 at areas of need on the defensive line and at linebacker, 2 as backup quarterbacks, and one of the most dynamic wide receivers in the portal. And oh, by the way, that is on top of all the guys they got last week, Will Shepherd, Matthew Bedford, all the guys that I mentioned. And so when I look at this, I have 2 really big picture thoughts about next season. One, or really about now, and then we'll get to next season momentarily. The first one, what else can we say about Coach? I give this guy so much credit, okay? So listen, we've talked about it before, but this offseason, about 3-4 weeks ago, there was so much negativity in the air about this program. What are they doing? They finished 4-8. Assistant coaches are leaving. And I give Coach Prime credit. In front of the camera, all this guy has done is exude confidence. He literally said, he goes, we need 3 things this year. He goes, we need some depth in the quarterback room. We want veteran quarterbacks. We don't want to go to the high school ranks. No disrespect, just a fact. We want a veteran quarterback to back up Shedeur. And I'll be honest, even at that point, I was like, are veterans going to come in to back up Shedeur? Oh, he got 2 of them. 2 of them. And so God forbid something happened to Shedeur, you're in good hands. Not going to happen because the offensive line is fixed, but you get the point. Beyond that, said we need to be able to run the ball better and stop the run better. And what has this guy done since? Bunch of offensive linemen. What was it? 5 offensive linemen last weekend, plus Jordan Seaton, the number 1 offensive tackle in America. And then again, stop the run with some elite linebackers, some elite defensive front guys. I can't believe this guy. He is unbelievable. And I think the thing that jumps out to me more than anything about the specific guys that they've gotten this year, I do think it's different than last year, because last year when they hit the portal, they brought in all those kids. And this is no disrespect. It's just a fact. But I remember following it at that time. And I said, I remember thinking there's a lot of interesting players. But outside of Travis Hunter, Deion Sanders, a lot of the guys that he brought with him from Jackson State, I don't know that there were a ton of guys There were some, but not a ton, that were like very, 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 very highly coveted in the portal. And that's what stands out to me this offseason. People criticize, people will complain, people will whatever. But at the end of the day, this is the difference between this year and last year. Last year, he's just filling bodies. He's just trying to fill out a roster. The previous roster wasn't good enough. He has to make changes. And so I bring it up because last year, some of the guys he sat there and said, okay, whatever, we trust Coach Prime. But this year, it's like, dude, he's getting guys that everybody wants. Matthew Bedford, that offensive lineman I've mentioned a few times. Remember, before he visited Colorado, he was at Auburn. If you're good enough to play at Auburn in the SEC against the best teams in college football, I think Colorado's in pretty good hands. Khalil Benson was getting recruited by all the big boys. He ends up at Colorado. Will Shepard, as I mentioned, was as coveted as any wide receiver in the country. Now you go to today's commitments. Quincy Wiggins, former top 50 guy, edge rusher, played 2 years at LSU. You mean to tell me nobody else wanted him? That this is just a scrap heap guy? Give me a break. Everybody in America wanted this kid. Colorado gets him. And so I'm not going to go through every guy. By the way, the wide receiver I just mentioned, for the kid from TCU, you mean to tell me everybody didn't want him? He had offers from Florida State and Nebraska coming out of high school. Keaton Wade, I just mentioned. You mean to tell me that Kentucky didn't want him to leave after tallying 51 tackles as a second-year player this year? And so this is what stands out about this team, about this program, and about Coach Prime. Last year, it was about just kind of filling up the roster. This year, he's being selective, and he's getting guys that other people want. And so I know every time somebody like me says positive things about Coach Prime, you're going to get that audience that says, oh, you guys overrate him. He stinks. Well, let me say this. 1 win to 4. This year, they were competitive. I've said it a million times. In most games. Not everyone. There was a gap between them and Oregon. I'm not going to lie. But USC was a 7-point final score. They had the ball late, driving with a chance to tie the game. Maybe win if they went for 2. Lost by 6 to Utah. No Shador. Utah had a backup quarterback, but so did Colorado. Lost on a walk-off field goal to Arizona. And so I just bring it up. This team wasn't that far off. And now you look at the dudes that he's bringing in. I'm here to tell you, man, he's got some dogs and he's got guys that people want, which I think is important. So we will continue to monitor all of Coach Prime's transfer portal news and notes here over the next couple of days, because I guarantee you, my man ain't done. As he said, we coming. We ain't stopping. He didn't say that part, but I said it for him. And it's going to be fascinating. I would say National Signing Day on Wednesday. I still think he's got I'm not wearing any sleeves, but I think he's got a trick or two up his sleeves, and I am fascinated to see what they are. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New episodes, new clips going up every single day. By the way, we do sell a little Coach Prime merch. If you're interested, go ahead and click the link in the show description. Enjoy your Sunday, enjoy your Monday, enjoy your Tuesday. Whenever you're listening, everybody, more Coach Prime content coming up.